If there's an Arab American family being rounded up without benefit of an attorney or due process, that threatens my civil liberties. It is that fundamental belief. It is that fundamental belief. I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper that makes this country work. I have two words for you. Predator drones. You will never see it coming.
President Obama authorized his first known drone strike 3 days after taking office, as he was announcing this radical shift from the Bush-era doctrine of preventive and preemptive war. President Obama is running an assassination program where in a 2-week span in Yemen, he killed 3 U.S. citizens, none of whom have been indicted or charged with any crime. And Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old U.S. citizen, whose only crime appears to have been that his last name was al-Awlaki, was murdered in a U.S. strike. And there has been no explanation as to why a 16-year-old U.S. citizen was killed. There is no indication that any suspected militants were killed. There's no indication that any known al-Qaeda figures were killed. That family deserves an explanation. The American people deserve an explanation.
When an American has made a decision to affiliate itself with al-Qaeda and target fellow Americans, there is a legal justification for us to try to stop them from carrying out plots.
Is there going to be any evidence presented?
I don't have anything for you on that.
Do you not see at all, does the administration not see at all how a president asserting that he has the right to kill an American citizen without due process, and that he's not going to even explain why he thinks he has that right, is troublesome to some people?
I wasn't aware of any of those things that you said actually happening, and again, I'm not going to address the circumstances of al-Awlaki's death.
I think that there's this perception somehow that we're just sending in a whole bunch of strikes willy-nilly. This is a targeted, focused effort at people who are on a list of active terrorists.
And there's this, quote, Mr. Obama embraced a disputed method for counting civilian casualties that did little to box him in. It in effect counts all military-age males in a strike zone as combatants, according to several administration officials, unless there is explicit intelligence posthumously proving them innocent.
I want to make sure that people understand actually drones have not caused a huge number of civilian casualties.
I want to take a look at some actual numbers here that the president didn't mention. This is according to a report put together by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Between 2,000 and 3,000 people have been killed by drones in Pakistan, and of those, as many as 780 are civilians. 175 have been children, and of the 312 drone strikes that have taken place, President Obama has issued 260 of them.
The CIA's drone campaign in Pakistan has killed dozens of civilians who've gone to rescue victims or were attending funerals. So concludes a new report by the London-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism. It found since President Obama took office 3 years ago, between 282 and 535 civilians have been reported as killed, including more than 60 children. The investigation also revealed at least 50 civilians were killed in follow-up strikes when they'd gone to help victims. More than 20 civilians have also been attacked in deliberate strikes on funerals and mourners.
U.S. drone strikes during Obama's first 2 years in office exceeded the total carried out during Bush's tenure.
We've got to make sure that in whatever operations we conduct, we are very careful about avoiding civilian casualties. And in fact, there are a whole bunch of situations where we will not engage in operations if we think that there's going to be civilian casualties involved.
Well, President Obama began bombing Yemen in December of 2009, and in the first strike that he authorized, cruise missiles and cluster bombs, which are these horrifying flying landmines that just shred people into meat, was an erroneous bomb, and it actually hit a village full of very, very poor Bedouins and killed over 40 of them. And the Yemeni government tried to cover it up and say that it was Yemeni forces that did it, but we know from the WikiLeaks cables that in fact it was U.S. forces, and we actually went there and filmed the missile parts and saw they were made by General Dynamic. They said made in the United States on them.
You should know that cluster bombs are still comprehensively banned by international treaty, but only after a backdoor effort led by the United States to weaken the ban fell flat. You should know the reason the weapon was banned in the first place is because they have a tendency to leave unexploded ordnance that look like little yellow drink containers and attract the attention of curious children.
Drones are one tool that we use, and our criteria for using them is very tight and very strict. It has to be a target that is authorized by our laws. It has to be a threat that is serious and not speculative.
U.S. intelligence relies oftentimes on very flimsy human intel on the ground. Yeah. My understanding from people in the intelligence community, and some people in the intelligence community are very disturbed about the number of civilians that get killed because it causes blowback. You need 3 human intelligence reports to put someone on a kill list. So if you have some people that have tribal grudges against someone else, they can sort of do death by Americans. It happens all the time in Afghanistan. So 3 people go on 3 different days, and they say to the Americans, there's these Taliban commanders in this house. And then the next guy comes and he says, there's a Taliban commander. And then the third guy comes and he says, well, they're preparing a suicide bomber. And then, you know, Joint Special Operations Command, Navy SEALs, burst into a home, end up shooting a bunch of people, and it actually turned out that was a U.S. trained Afghan police commander. And I mean, that's a real story that I documented when I was in Afghanistan. In Yemen, it's the same thing. It could be that the Saleh regime also fed bad intelligence to the Americans to try to kill political opponents. There was a deputy governor of a province in Yemen who was killed in one of the U.S. airstrikes, and U.S. intelligence officials now believe that it was because the Saleh regime wanted him killed that they fed them bad intelligence. So we have a total dearth of intelligence on the ground in Yemen. We are the most clueless people operating in Yemen.
The report is called Living Under Drones, Death, Injury and Trauma to Civilians from U.S. Drone Practices in Pakistan. This is an interview the researchers did with one of the survivors of a drone attack.
It was Ramadan. We were about to break our fast with the children. We took a bite, said our prayers. The children had just started eating when the missile struck. My 2 sons and I were outside, but everyone inside was killed. 3 people were killed, my brother's son, and my brother-in-law.
The report also examined the underreported psychological impact of drone warfare on the local community in the Pakistani area of Waziristan. The report says the drone strikes, quote, terrorize men, women and children, giving rise to anxiety and psychological trauma among civilian communities. Those living under drones have to face the constant worry that a deadly strike may be fired at any moment and the knowledge that they are powerless to protect themselves. A local from Waziristan explained the psychological terror caused by drones.
The drones are having a really bad effect on this area. Everyone is under so much psychological pressure that many have to go to the city to see a doctor.
And here's a reporter pointing to where the American citizen son of Anwar al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old boy who was from Denver, was killed. Take a look.
These are the spots where the son of the American preacher, Anwar al-Awlaki, was killed. His son and 8 of his friends were sitting in this place having dinner, and they were targeted by one rocket here, another rocket there, if you see this big circle targeted them, and then another rocket beyond this area. They say it's an American targeted killing for an American citizen, of course.
When the Obama administration sets a policy where patterns of life are enough of a green light to drop missiles on people or to use, to send in AC-130s to spray them down. If you go to the village of Al-Majla in Yemen, where I was, and you see the unexploded cluster bombs, and you have the list and photographic evidence, as I do, of the women and children that represented the vast majority of the deaths in this first strike that Obama authorized on Yemen, those people were murdered by President Obama on his orders because there was believed to be someone from Al-Qaeda in that area. There's only one person that's been identified that had any connection to Al-Qaeda there, and 21 women and 14 children were killed in that strike. And the U.S. tried to cover it up and say it was a Yemeni strike, and we know from the WikiLeaks cables that David Petraeus conspired with the president of Yemen to lie to the world about who did that bombing. It's murder it's mass murder when you say we are going to bomb this area because we believe a terrorist is there, and you know that women and children are in the area. I'm sorry, that's murder. Is that our policy is actually giving a greater incentive to people to become terrorists or to become insurgents or to become rebels against the United States.
Most of the militants killed in the strikes have been low-level targets whose deaths have failed to make the United States any safer. Just 2% of drone attack victims are said to be top militant leaders.
I have two words for you: Predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?